one ought every day at least to hear a little song, read a good poem, see a fine picture, and if it were possible, to speak a few reasonable words. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. I'm your host, Ramya Amathan. The quote that we picked for today is by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and it's from the book Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship. And I wanted to kind of roundtable this with myself and Nisreen because it's about art, right? So it's about the concept of art, but in a very kind of simple way. And I don't mean that derogatorily. I just think simply taking in art on a regular basis is good for us. It's good for our energy and our mental health, and to be able to have these moments of appreciation, whether it's you're walking down the street and you find a mural, or you see something in a windowsill, or you find a crowd gathering up around something in downtown Toronto, and you're like, what is that? What is that? What is that? And it's this giant art installation that's popped up in the middle of the summer. All of these ways of just kind of taking in art regularly. He also said something about reasonable words, but I don't know about that. But just the way that you can, that a poem can make you feel, that a good line can make you feel, or a good piece of music in the middle of your day. Now, Niz, you're an artist, you're a DJ, and I wanted to ask about that aspect of it, first of all, the way that you connect with art in general. How does art make you feel?
I feel like, as you said, the summertime, it's just a whole other spectrum of creativity with people and communities coming out, and there's a lot going on. I'm DJing a lot more in the summertime. There's so many more parties, and that's the best time. I love seeing other people's creative side. I don't know about you, but when I walk through downtown, you see people singing, drumming, or there's graffiti on the wall or whatever it may be. It's just so thrilling. Is that the word I would use?
I love that you said that. You love seeing other people's creative side, because I also feel this rush when, some of my friends, they outright say, like, I'm not an artist, I'm not artistic. That's just what they throw around. And I'm like, no, that's bad language. I really think that we all have artist in us, and it doesn't mean that you go out and you're this amazing painter, or that you can drop a freestyle at a whim, but it's really that you can appreciate art, and I think that brings out artistic sides of you, right? It empowers you in that creative sense to be able to appreciate even a good comedic line, or something like that. And I bond with people over art that way, small and big, right? And then you mentioned the summertime, which is so true. I love art in the summer because everyone's experiencing it. That's the only way that I can really talk about it. We're all out. We're all somehow engaged, whether you're just walking down the street or actually visiting art festivals, and there's music in the air through patios and restaurants. Just people are experiencing art. But in the winter or in other ways, you sometimes have to experience art individually, and that's a deeper process, right? Like, when do you most get with art by yourself, on your own?
I'm a night owl, and I think that's my best time of work. And when I DJ or when I mix music, I think that's mainly my creative side of time, I guess. So even when I'm alone, I feel like I'm more productive, I'm more creative. My thoughts get all over the place, and it's a nice feeling.
Works for you.
Yeah, it works for me.
I love staying up. I don't do it often, but I love staying up late, especially if I've taken like a really long nap and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be up all night. And then, depending on the headspace, I can get really, really creative. Sometimes that headspace is, bad emotion, right? And the art is your release. But other times it's that you're getting in touch with yourself, and that there is this ideal. It's late, it's quiet, I'm isolated, and this is my artistic spot. So anyways, Thank you for engaging in this with me. Let's quickly run through the CELA homepage. This is from the Center for Equitable Library Access, and we go to celalibrary.ca for these 3 featured titles. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Q. Sutanto. This is Mysteries. It's still up there, so check it out. The Climate Book by Greta Thunberg, and The White Lady by Jacqueline Winspire. And this is a historical fiction. Niz, do we have time for book news?
Yeah, I'll run it through quickly. So according to e-reader, Javier Calaya presented new reports about the Spanish audiobooks and ebooks in 2022 and how there's a rising trend in Spanish audiobooks. So I was going to go through this and ask you if you would consider listening to audiobooks in other languages. Like for me, I'm fluent in Arabic, but I don't know if I would consider listening to Arabic audiobooks ever. I feel like it's just more complicated than that because there's so many dialects to understand. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, especially long stories. So I was going to ask you, how would you do it?
I'm concerned that though Tamil is my first language and I'm absolutely fluent in it and I love listening to stories, just colloquially, anecdotally, casually, in Tamil, I'm nervous that if I were to pick up an audiobook, it would, I would very quickly realize that I'm not as well versed in the language as I think I am, because there is very formal writing in the language and I don't know if I can follow an entire audiobook. So I think we have to start with a sample or something. Figure it out, you know? Stick around because this month we have Know Your Narrator with Sara Hillis, and we're jumping into Audiophile Magazine's 2023 pick for Golden Voices. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. I'm your host, Ramya Amadin, and it's time for that section of the month, the episode where we, once a month, feature a notable narrator in the world of audiobooks. And this is brought to us by Sara Hillis. We shout out the voices behind our favorite listens and get to know the fascinating lives and backgrounds behind these people, of these individuals. So today's feature narrator is the 2023, or one of, Audiophile Magazine Golden Voice. Is it one of, Sarah, or
yeah, there are 3 that were named this year. So
okay, who is it?
Nicholas Boulton, who is from England. Well, he's a British narrator. Mostly he narrates a lot of classics for Naxos audio books. So lots of Dickens and Wilkie Collins and some Gothic stuff like Matthew Lewis and things like that. But he does a lot of other things as well. I think I figured out that he's been narrating since about 2011. It was a bit hard to pin that down, but I think I managed to do that.
Was it a secret?
But they'd never mentioned the year until I read something that did say his first book was released in 2011. And it was just a producer at Recorded Books had given him a novel, kind of a naval novel, taking place in the 1800s, but or actually the 1700s. He decided to narrate it, and then from then on, I guess he just, liked the job and did it. So he's been doing it for, I guess, 13 years now, something
Pretty
like
much,
that.
Yeah. You want to describe his voice to us before we get into anything else?
Yeah, I guess I would say his voice, he's got a good baritone voice. It's warm sounding. You want to listen to him for a long, long time. He's not one of those narrators that you just kind of go like, okay, I'm done. I have to stop for a minute. You could just listen for hours and hours. He uses pauses and pacing really well to kind of make his sentences work and, make the book understandable to people. I find there's a bit of an intensity under his voice too, like a kind of
like a serious audio describer.
Yeah, kind of like that.
I get that vibe.
Yeah, so I really do enjoy his work. I've enjoyed it on BBC Radio 4. He'd done a lot of plays on that station, which I'll get to in a second. Mm-hmm. And Michael and I liked him as an actor in an audio drama, he played Sherlock Holmes in a thing called The Voice of Treason.
Oh.
And that was a really interesting drama that Audible did in 2021, I think.
Actually, I could totally figure out roles that he would play. You know what I mean? Like, as a narrator, he's narrating, obviously, telling the story, but I could see the kinds of characters he'd be cast as based on his voice. So that's great that you mentioned this.
Yeah. He's really good at creating characters. He says that one of his favorite characters is a guy called Uriah Heep, who's in David Copperfield, and he's this really smarmy, like, horrible guy, but he's got this ingratiating way about him, and Nicholas Boulton, just, he would totally nail that kind of thing. Like, he can do both at the same time.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, so tell us more about him. Background.
Yeah, so he was born in 1968 in Gibraltar, which is, well, at the time anyway, for sure, was a British colony off the coast of Spain, as it were. And I don't know if it still is or not, but the point is he was born there. He was in an army family originally from Northern Ireland, and they moved around a lot, of course, being an army family. And then he went to boarding school in Ireland and then in England, and really got the acting bug, he said, by the time he was about 11. And by the time he was 16, he got himself into the Guildhall School of Drama and studied there. And won a really prestigious prize called the Carlton Hobbs Prize from BBC Radio, which allowed him to have a 7-month contract as a radio actor there in the repertory company. And he said this was amazing because you did like a play a week almost. You had to prepare them really fast. And you went and recorded, over 3 or 4 days kind of thing to get the play done. And that's amazing to me. I don't know if he's done more since then, but if it was only the 7-month contract, he did a lot of work because I've heard him in a lot of plays. Crazy stuff. So he's done, of course, he's done theater, lots of theater.
He's done everything.
Movies. He was in Shakespeare in Love. He played a guy called Henry Condell. And he was in Game of Thrones. He played the fighting pit announcer in season 5 the last episode of season 5. Apparently.
Gosh, that's a reason to rewatch this episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done that yet, but yeah. And
didn't you hear the word fighting pit? Let's rewatch. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, that's
or
a good,
watch for the
that was a
first
good
time.
one. There was like dragons and stuff. It was great. And yeah, he's done a ton of different. He's done a lot of video game voices. Certainly Dragon Age 2, he was Hawk in that one, which is one of the main protagonists. I don't know much about Dragon Age, but it's kind of an RPG type deal. So yeah, so sort of medieval kind of stuff, right? So,
but this is a big deal, like that he's the voice of, or one of the big voices of this video game series.
Yeah, I think people really love what he did, and I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet, like, who's Nicholas Boulton? Like, and it's a video game website that's asking who,
Right.
let's hear more about Nicholas Boulton. So,
okay,
he's a bit of a star in the video game world.
I mean, clearly he's done a lot of voice work, but also it seems like he's intensely done specific voice work, like the theater and video game is what I'm most hearing now.
Yeah, I think that's mainly what he's doing. If he's not narrating audiobooks and stuff like that, he seems to be doing a lot of video games right now, which a lot of actors are doing, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. It's not often that we're finding a narrator who's only particularly doing audiobooks. Now, obviously, some of the people we've featured, they're up to like hundreds of narrations, right? Which means that that's what they're doing more than anything else. But then others who are just like dabbling in absolutely everything, as they should be.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's one of these things where you go in a studio for a few days and you do your bit and then you leave. Like, yeah. So it's easy to kind of fit it in and do it. And
yeah. Do you think that it's very fitting, the kinds of audiobooks he's done, like the classics you've mentioned a bunch already?
Oh yeah, I think he's great for, like, he's able to adapt himself to different kinds of things. He's done some nonfiction, some historical type nonfiction. Which I think he'd be great for, because he's just got this great narration. He can just, make it a story, even if it's a nonfiction book. You can make it sound like you want to hear more kind of thing, right?
Right.
But yeah, for the classics, he's absolutely perfect for them. He's able to take these really long sentences. A lot of writers in the 1800s used really complicated sentences with a lot of like subordinate clauses and all this stuff, you know. And it's like I'm reading a sentence in Dickens and I'm like, where did this begin? You know, I'm reading it in Braille and I'm
3
like,
pages
what
later.
was this sentence? You know, and the sentence is like a paragraph might be 3 pages long. The sentence might be half a page long. But Nicholas is able to take those sentences and pause in the right places and make them sound probably the way the author wanted them to sound, you know. And yeah, it's because there are punctuation marks all the way through them, so you can use those. And so he does a great job with that kind of thing. He says it's really challenging because you have to take a deep breath and sort of get yourself through the thing kind of thing, because sometimes you can't breathe too often within a single sentence, and
because it starts becoming way too fragmented feeling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he does find that a bit of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. He enjoys it.
I guess the challenge, really, I want to say problem, is that books are not always meant to be read out loud. Like, obviously we're praising and celebrating audiobooks, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, some writing is very difficult to read out loud and then to perform it well for others to hear you. So it's true when you're talking about classics and all the old writing, and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, people listening to this in 2023 might not be able to deal with the writing itself, and then you as the narrator have to say, how do I make this listenable?
Yeah, I would actually say that most books of that time were meant more to be maybe read aloud, but people, we've lost the art of doing it.
Yeah, okay, that's fair too.
So he's trying to get into that way of doing things, right? Because
it's just when I see writing like this, just, you know, ongoing sentences as you described, I find that that's more challenging to make a performance of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to really prepare yourself, and he says when he did the BBC plays, like, that really stood him in good stead for when he started doing the narration, because you had to prepare carefully and quickly to perform your part. I mean, you were able to read it because it was radio, so you didn't have to do it. You didn't have to memorize everything. But you still had to prepare so that when you read it, you didn't take 700 takes to do it, right? And so it really did help him get some chops for preparation. He loves listening to people's voices just randomly on the street and stuff. To you know, he might find a character. He said in one of his interviews, he said, you know, I do listen to conversations. You have been warned, you know.
Oh, true.
If you see me around or whatever.
Yep. The narrator's best friend, eavesdropping. But does he do a lot of character voices?
He does. He will create voices for characters. And he does in a really good way, in that they're very distinct, but they're very carefully done. So they're not over ridiculous, unless
Like
they really have
theatrical?
to be for some reason. Yeah, if the character's a theatrical character, I mean, you want to make it fun and interesting. But like, yeah, his voices are you know, he uses accents to some degree. He uses tone and such. I mean, his women's voices are not all high and like this, you know, but they sound, you know, they're not the same as the men's voices.
Right,
He's able to do it. It's just careful. It's just, and it's really good. Like,
I can appreciate that. Now, he did talk about Dickens. Have we talked about this already? About narrating Dickens' works?
Yeah, we can still do this. Yeah, he really loves narrating Dickens's works and Wilkie Collins, because he says the authors really bring out the character in the way they speak, in the words they use, in the descriptions that the narrator gives, so that you don't have to do a lot of work. If you're really looking at the text, it just comes to you as an actor. You can say, okay, this is the sort of character it's supposed to be. I don't have to go real hard on creating my own voice, because you're telling me what the voice is supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, he really likes that.
Yeah, I think that for people who do a lot of different work, and specifically voice work, I guess, you have to be able to adapt, right? The circumstances change when you're doing the BBC radio dramas and radio plays versus a video game versus an audiobook. It's not just that you're doing different work, but the intention behind it is so different. Like, are you reading something verbatim? Are you inserting yourself into this role versus something else where you're trying to take the words of the author, and that's the highlight. That's what you're shining a light on. I think that it can feel quite significantly different to do different things like this.
Yeah, I think he does sort of say that to some degree. He feels that narration is a very lonely art, but also rewarding and cool, and he loves it. But it is very isolating feeling. With video games, you have to act. Sometimes
Yes.
you're acting to nobody. You're acting.
Oh, absolutely.
You're just saying your part, and then someone else is coming and putting their part in later. So that's kind of fun and challenging.
That's the studio life, right? You're in front of a microphone or behind a microphone with the headset on, and you may or may not have someone in a room next to you telling you what to do or feedbacking with you, because and that's a completely different performance. You're almost performing for yourself and then saying, like, someone's going to hear this later. A whole bunch of you are going to hear this later.
Yeah, it's kind of a bizarre way to do it, but for narration, he enjoys the intimacy of it. He really likes when people say, you brought this to life for me in a good way. Like most of the narrators we've looked at, they all seem to say that they're happy when they make that connection with the reader or the listener.
Does he have a favorite kind of book to read?
I don't know if he has a real favorite kind of book. I think he just likes books with really good story lines and really good characters and that kind of thing. He's a fan favorite, though, in the historical romance genre. He's done a few of these romance type books. So like the kind of book where it's like people in the 1400s, but they get together and there's action and there's probably some fun stuff and that kind of stuff. It's historical romance, and a couple authors have picked him to do their work, so they've heard him in other things and they said, please do this one because I need gravitas, but I also need good character usage and that kind of stuff. And so
do you, as a preference, enjoy listening to narrators who make the reads more theatrical, more out there, it's just like a lot of personality in their reads? Or do you prefer someone like, I think Nicholas is a good example, who just makes subtle changes here and there so you understand what's going on, what's flowing, but not necessarily saying, okay, this character has to be this way?
I think for me, less is more in many ways. I like a narrator who can bring character to their story, obviously. But sometimes there are narrators who are always themselves and you know it. And Nicholas Boulton doesn't do that. He becomes the book when he reads it. So he isn't Nicholas Boulton reading a book. He's the book. He's the manifestation of the book for me.
Right.
So I mean, I like Nicholas Boulton's voice. Like some actors I find who just get picked to do a narration sometimes, they're so trying to be themselves that it's that actor all the time, and it kind of ruins it for me.
Interesting. I like that he's the manifestation of the book. That's a real interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. How about preparing? Did he talk about that process?
Yeah, he reads really carefully. When he's dealing with authors that are still around, he talks to them. He collaborates with them. He says he likes working on these romantic series because in the beginning the author is like, well, this is the sort of character that this person is and that, and then but as he goes on, the author kind of develops trust that he's going to do a good job of their work, and he's really grateful when that happens. Like, he's really privileged to be able to be trusted by these authors who write these stories.
There's he talked a little bit about the trust between the narrator and the author and the relationships that people might be hesitant to build, letting go, maybe.
Yeah. Some of the it's usually not a difficult thing for him, but sometimes they a lot of narrators have said this too. It's I am a professional. I know what I'm doing. Please let me do what I need to do. And most of the authors have been good about that after a couple books anyway, right? Like,
yeah. So when is he reading your grocery list for you?
I don't know, but man, he totally could. He could read, 1 dozen eggs and oh man, like go Nicholas,
Yeah, totally. We've become super fans. Just like read everything for us. Others look for Morgan Freeman and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But we're good with Nicholas Boulton.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to be continuing to profile Golden Voices by Audiophile Magazine. Right?
Yeah, next month will be Marin, Ireland.
Okay, amazing. Sarah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We were featuring on Know Your Narrator this month with Sara Hillis, Nicholas Boulton, who is one of the 2023 Audiophile Magazine Golden Voices. We'll continue doing that over the summer. That's a nice series for this monthly episode. And that's it for us. I'm Ramia Amadin with Nasreen Abdelmajid, our audio technical producer for AMI Audiobook Review. And until next week, and you have a brand new episode, happy audiobook listening.